Courses on life, works, and writings of Jose Rizal, particularly his novel Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo, shall be included in the curricula of all schools, colleges, and universities, public or private, provided that in the collegiate courses, the original or unexpurgated editions of the Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo or their English translation shall be used as
It
basic
shall be
text.
obligatory on all schools, colleges, and universities to keep in their libraries an adequate number of copies of the original and unexpurgated editions of the Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo, as well as of Rizal's other works and biography. The said unexpurgated editions of the Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo, or their translations in English, as well as other writings of Rizal, shall be included in the list of approved books for required reading in all public or private schools,
The Board of
colleges,
National
and
Education shall cause the translation of the Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo, as well as other writings of Jose Rizal, into English, Tagalog, and the principal Philippine dialects, cause them to be printed into cheap, popular editions, and cause them to be distributed free of charge to persons desiring to read them through paroch organizations and barrio councils throughout the country.
These are excerpts from the Republic Act 1425, also known as the Rizal Law, which has made learning Rizal's works and life as a mandatory course. It's because of this law that Jose Rizal has become a household name, and every year, every Filipino student looks forward to the 30th of December as a chance to take a break from school. But not everybody knows the reason why December 30 is remembered.
Why is Rizal's execution so important? And why was he executed?
You see, Rizal lived in a time of political change. Revolutionary ideas from the earlier age of enlightenment led to people rejecting the idea of divine right, which was how kings claimed their legitimacy to the throne. Instead, the people learned that power came from themselves, and they could replace tyrants and dictators if they wanted. These revolutionary ideas led to the overthrow and execution of absolute monarchs such as Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette in France. News of the regicide spread throughout Europe, which were all mostly monarchies. As a matter of self-preservation, these governments tried to prevent any radical ideas from reaching their people.
Rizal was a target for persecution when he gave his speech, Brindis, by which he congratulated painters Juan Luna and Felix Resurrección Hidalgo in 1882.
In the history of mankind, there are names in which themselves signify an achievement which call up reverence and greatness. Names which come to form a compact, a token of peace, a bond of love among the nations. To such belong the names of Luna and Hidalgo. Their splendor illuminates two extremes of the globe, the Orient and the Occident, Spain and the Philippines. I drink that the Filipino youth, sacred hope of my fatherland, may imitate such valuable examples, and that the mother Spain, solicitous and heedful of the welfare of her provinces, may quickly put into practice the reforms she has so long planned.
The speech itself was not a crime, but it made the Spanish doubtful. Rizal was made to be a possible filibustero or freebooter. It didn't help that his novels attacked the church and only fueled the suspicions. Spain was steadily weakening and had lost many of its colonies, including Mexico. She was determined not to lose another. We all know that Rizal was a frequent traveler, but when he returned to the Philippines in 1887, word about Noli had already spread. The friars tried to influence Governor General Emilio Terrero to have Rizal arrested. Luckily for Rizal, Terrero was a level-headed man and refused the friars. He even asked for a copy of the novel so he could read it himself. On February 3, 1888, Rizal leaves for Hong Kong. When he returns to the Philippines on June 26, 1892, he is framed and deported and spends the next 4 years living in exile in Dapitan.
On the 6th of October 1896, Rizal left Spain aboard the Colon. Rizal was taken to Fort Santiago, where he was held incommunicado. There were also other patriots, including his brother Pasiano, who were being tortured to implicate him. Pasiano refused to sign anything, even after getting beaten black and blue and left with a crushed hand. Since martial law was proclaimed over the 8 provinces of Luzon, Rizal was tried before a military tribunal. Preliminary investigation began on November 20, with Rizal appearing before Judge Advocate Colonel Francisco Olive. On the 26th, the records of the case were handed over to Governor General Ramon Blanco, who then appointed Captain Rafael Dominguez as a special judge advocate.
Rizal was charged with 3 crimes: rebellion, sedition, and formation of illegal association. The punishment for the first 2 crimes was death, while the punishment for the third crime was a fine of 325 to 3,250 pesos. 15 documents were used as evidence against him. A letter from Antonio Luna to Mariano Ponce dated October 16, 1888, Madrid, showing Rizal's connection with the reform movement in Spain. A letter of Rizal to his family dated August 20, 1890, Madrid, stating that the deportations are good and the people will grow to hate Spanish tyranny.
A letter of Carlos Oliver to an identified person, September 18, 1891, Barcelona, stating that Rizal was the man who could free the Philippines from the oppression of Spain. Rizal was arraigned on December 11. In his prison cell, Rizal was read the charges against him.
Principal organizer and the living soul of the Filipino insurrection, the founder of societies, periodicals, and books dedicated to fomenting and propagating the ideas of rebellion.
On December 13, Camilo de Polavieja became Governor-General of the Philippines. Dominguez submitted the papers of the Rizal case to Malacañang Palace.
The day after Christmas, the trial of Rizal began at the Cuartel de España. On the same day, the court-martial secretly and unanimously voted for a guilty verdict with the penalty of death before a firing squad. On December 28, Polavieja signs the death verdict. Rizal was read his verdict by Captain Rafael Dominguez, to be shot the next day at 7 o'clock a.m. at the Luneta de Bagumbayan, now famously known as Rizal Park. Rizal was transferred to the chapel cell adorned by religious images to convince him to go back to the Catholic fold. His first visitors were Jesuit priests, Fathers Miguel Sandera Mata and Luis Visa. After Father Sandera left, Rizal asked Father Visa for the Sacred Heart statuette which he carved when he was an Ateneo student. From his pocket, the statuette appears.
Rizal spent time alone in his cell. He had lunch, wrote letters, and probably wrote his last poem of 14 stanzas, which he wrote in his flowing handwriting, in a very small piece of paper. He hid it inside his alcohol stove. The untitled poem was later known as Mi Ultimo Adios. In its second stanza, he already praised the revolutionaries in the battlefield for giving their lives without doubt, without gloom. Rizal's mother, Teodora Alonso, comes to visit. Then Rizal's sister, Trinidad, entered to get her mother, and Rizal whispered to her in English, referring to the alcohol stove,
There is something inside.
They were also accompanied by Narcisa, Lucia, Josefa, Maria, and son Mauricio Cruz. Leoncio Lopez Rizal, Narcisa's 11-year-old son, was not allowed to enter the cell. While leaving for their carriages, an official handed over the alcohol stove to Narcisa. After their visit, Fathers Villa Clara and Estanislao March returned to the cell, followed by Father Rosel. During his last supper, Rizal informs Captain Dominguez that he already forgave those who condemned him.
A teary-eyed Josephine Bracken and Josefa Rizal came. According to the testimony of the agent of the Cuerpo de Vigilancia, Josephine and Rizal were married. Josephine was gifted by Rizal with the classic Thomas A. Kempis book, Imitations of Christ, in which he inscribed,
To my dear and unhappy wife, Josephine, December 30, 1896. Jose Rizal.
They embraced for the last time. Rizal wrote his father, Francisco Mercado,
My beloved father, pardon me for the pain with which I prepay you for sorrows and sacrifices for my education. I did not want nor I did prefer it. Goodbye, father. Goodbye. Jose Rizal.
To his mother, he had only these words,
To my very dear mother, Senora Doña Teodora Alonso, 6 o'clock in the morning, December 30, 1896. Jose Rizal.
The death march from Fort Santiago to Bagong Bayan begins at 6:30 in the morning. 4 soldiers with bayoneted rifles led the procession, followed by Rizal, Taviel de Andrade, Fathers Villa Clara and March, and other soldiers. They passed by the Intramuros Plaza, then turned right to the Postigo Gate, then left at Malecon, the Bayside Road known as Bonifacio Drive. They arrive at 7. Rizal's pulse is checked by Dr. Felipe Ruiz Castillo. It was perfectly normal. Rizal once wrote,
I wish to show those who deny us patriotism that we know how to die for our duty and our convictions.
Dr. Felipe Ruiz Castillo, who took Rizal's vital signs and pulse rate before the execution, was amazed to find that the national hero was calm and unafraid.
With the captain shouting, Fuego! Shouts rang out from the guns of 8 Indio soldiers. Rizal, being a convicted criminal, was not facing the firing squad. As he was hit, he resists and turns himself to face his executioners. He falls down and dies facing the sky. Historical accounts showed that 6 to 8 Filipino volunteer troops composed the firing squad designated by Spanish authorities to execute Rizal. A descendant of one of the executioners, Adolfo Pastor Quencuti, related that only one of the rifles was loaded with a live bullet while the rest were blanks. This is to ease the guilt of Rizal's executioners, who knew he was innocent, he explained. Another group of peninsular troops also stood behind them as an additional measure just in case the Filipino troops decided to back down.
In the late afternoon of the same day, the women members of the Rizal family came to Fort Santiago to bid goodbye. First was the mother, Doña Teodora Alonso. They had only a few minutes to speak. It was said that they were held by the guards apart. That mother and son ended their last conversation in tears. Then came the sisters one by one. To each Rizal gave a present. All were in tears. They listened to him intently but were speechless. Then came the important instructions, which must not be heard by the guards. So when it was the turn of his 3 sisters, Lucia, Josefa, and Trinidad, the 3 who had been with him in Hong Kong and who could speak English, the instructions was made clear and in secret. He whispered that he is leaving some personal things to them. To Trinidad, he gave an alcohol burner, a present to him by his friends, the Taveras, and which he used in his cell. Then, to prevent detection from the guards, he whispered to Trinidad in English,
There's something inside it.
and to another sister, he whispered also in English,
Look in my shoes.
That something inside the alcohol burner turned out to be the immortal untitled poem we now know as Mi Ultimo Adios. But what was inside the shoes? Could the note that was left inside his shoes be another manifesto this time, calling the people to unite and fight for the revolution? When end was imminent and death could not be impeded, Rizal accepted his fate calmly. Perhaps he was never a traitor to Spain, but with this injustice now done to him, and also learning his brother was tortured by the authorities because of him, what could have run into his mind? For Jose Rizal, the last straw was none other than himself. There is indeed a big possibility that in the shoes was a note. And could it be that the written in the said note was a call to unite behind the